Hey, so no track release or anything today. I know, sorry, but I have another tutorial for you that might help you out when it comes to getting footage for a new map or to start making your own unique content. Today, we're all about FPV. Those that have dabbled in content creation regarding Assetto Corsa cinematics have all come across the drone cam mod at some point or another, but there's another drone mod that seems to be far less used that I personally enjoy more simply because I'm already a part of the hobby. The FPV drone mod is essentially the same idea as the normal drone mod, except instead of being tied to your car at all times, you're completely free to roam about the map in whatever direction you want, regardless of where your car is at the moment. The mod turns your free cam into an FPV drone that you can add physics to and adjust to get whatever kind of shot you're looking for. I use this mod in all my recent releases and future ones to get interesting shots that are not easily replicated. Today I'm going to show you how I set up my FPV mod and what it actually takes to be able to use it effectively. If you think this is going to be as simple as downloading the mod and flying around, you're only partially right. The easy part is downloading the mod. The hard part comes when you try to fly. Let's just start with downloading the mod, shall we? We can start by laying down the basics. We can already assume if you're looking in the mods, you already have Content Manager along with Custom Shaders patch. If not, I'll link a decent tutorial in the description for you until I can make my own. Probably whenever my PC blows up and I have to reinstall everything. First, we're going to go to the FPV drone download page on Overtake and download the FPV drone mod by SUG. Once that's downloaded, go ahead and drag that sucker straight into Content Manager. It'll download, and after you install it, you're done. That's it. GG's. Okay, fine. You have the mod, but you still need to learn how to fly. Easier said than done, honestly. Especially if you've never flown a drone before. Actually, even if you've flown a drone before. See, FPV stands for first person view, and these drones differ from 99% of drones most people have flown simply due to that fact. You can go to pretty much any store that sells toys and pick up a super cheap $30 drone and fly that around all you want. You could even go to something like a Best Buy and pick up a $1,500 DJI kit, but neither of those will actually give you the same experience as an FPV drone would. Let's do this. There are two main differences here that are really the defining factors. The first factor is the FPV part of the drone. But Matt, I can just watch the drone from the ground like I do my cheap $20 drone from Target. Fair point. That doesn't apply here. The second factor is degrees of rotation. See, your cheapo toy drone is locked into what pilots call horizon mode or angle mode. When you push your roll axis to the right, the drone tilts right and then locks in place so you can physically move to the right. When you move that stick back to center, the drone goes back to being flat again. FPV drones don't do that. Okay, fine, they can do that, but most pilots use what's called ACRO. This gives the pilot freedom to have unlimited degrees of rotation along all axes. If you try to do the same exercise as before, where we pushed our stick to the right, we would quickly flip out of control and fall out of the sky. Fine, Matt, I'll just let go of the stick. Well, now we're in a different predicament. See, now if we stop holding our stick and go back to center, our drone is still moving to the right indefinitely. We have to countersteer to get it back to being still in the air. See what I did there? Drifting? Yeah. What I'm trying to say is with FPV drones and this mod, you'll be using ACRO mode, so it's going to take a bit of time to get used to. I got into the drone hobby well before I started making Assetto Corsa content, so I have a ton of hours in various simulators like DRL, Liftoff, DCO, Velocidrone, Uncrashed, AI Drone, I Have a Problem, and it took countless hours in these sims to actually build up the confidence to fly my first IRL drone. All this to say, you will not be perfect on your first day, maybe not your first month, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. Hey, wait a second, Matt. You didn't even talk about how to enable my controller to start flying. This tutorial is stupid. Fuck you, buddy. I'm working on it. For this to work, you're going to need some kind of radio or controller. A real drone radio like this one that I spent $200 on will be perfect, but you know, if you don't want to spend that kind of money, I get it. A normal controller works almost as well with enough practice, don't worry. Okay, so once you get some runs in and have a replay, or you're in a full lobby with your buddies, yes, this works online, you can go over to your sidebar and select the drone cam icon. This is where you configure your drone specs, camera settings, and world physics, as well as a few other settings you'll probably touch once and forget about. Let's go over the ones you touch once first, just to get up and running. In the Input tab, click the drop-down to select your device you want to use to fly the drone. Oh yeah, you'll have to have this plugged in prior to entering into the game or replay. Go ahead and set your left stick vertical axis to throttle, your left stick horizontal axis to yaw, your right stick vertical axis to pitch, and finally your right stick horizontal axis to roll. This is how most drone radios are set up. The values underneath are simply outer dead zones for your sticks. Adjust those based on your controller's needs, or simply leave them as is. Next, we can move over to the Keybinds tab. I'll be honest, I forgot these existed, but they're essentially toggleables for setting reset positions and getting in and out of drone cam. Very useful. Now we can talk about the big three. We'll start with the FPV drone tab. This is basically like a car builder. A car can't go too fast with tiny go-kart wheels, the same way a drone can't go too fast with tiny propellers. If you just want to get started, you can go ahead and copy my settings, but I'll briefly explain each one for you. The battery cells are basically how much horsepower you have, while the motor KV is like how much of that horsepower gets to the wheels. Drone people are gonna get mad at me for that explanation, but it's the easiest way that I can explain it to car people. Motor KV is how fast the motor spins. Mass is the mass of the drone. Prop diameter is how wide the propeller is, while prop pitch is the angle at which the propeller slices through the air. The lower the prop pitch, the less resistance they have cutting through the air, but also the less upward force they can exert on the drone. The drone angle drastically changes the way your stick inputs feel simply because it's the angle of your FPV camera respective to the drone body. Camera FOV is how zoomed in or out the camera is. Most FPV pilots have a camera FOV in their goggles of 100 to 110 depending on their setup, while most GoPro footage is typically around 90. Surface area is how big your drone is, like how much room it takes up, while the last slider is surface area coefficient, which basically tells the game how aerodynamic all of that surface area is. Let's move over to the Physics tab. Air density is kind of like a maneuverability factor for your drone. The higher this value is set, the easier it is to turn and pick up speed. Air drag, on the other hand, is how easily you're able to move through the air. This works the opposite way, so the lower this value, the easier you can move around. This is the most simple way I can fathom to explain these two concepts, so if you're not too sure, play around with them or just copy what I have here. Gravity is gravity. Duh. Currently, I have these physics settings set up to be as realistic as they can be, in my opinion, based on the drone setup I have on. Ground height is literally just where you want the drone to bottom out, and time multiplier, I don't know why that's here. Don't touch that. Almost done, just gotta talk through rates. This is a hard one to gloss over because they're extremely important, but I'm gonna do my best to explain this as simply as possible. There are three categories here, and each one has a slider for each axis, excluding the throttle axis. You have rate, super, and expo. Rate is how responsive or quickly the drone is going to react to your stick inputs. A higher value allows you to spin faster, and a lower value spins slower. Super is like expanding the max rotation higher than what the rate can do. This will also stretch the entire rest of the stick input curve, in turn, making a majority of the stick feel more sensitive. Expo stands for exponential. This modifies the progression of stick input exponentially. In action, if my rate is set to 1 and my super and expo are set to 0, my stick input will be linear, meaning at 50% to the right, I'm at 50% my max rotation speed. If, however, I turn my expo up to max, the curve looks a lot different. Now, when I move my stick to the right, I can see I need to go a lot further on that axis to reach the same rotation speed.
Expo is useful if you need to be able to make very small and precise stick movements while also having that top-end rotation speed when you need it. These are the closest settings to what I use for my drones IRL when I'm flying around, like you can find in some of my earlier YouTube videos on the channel. So these should be a good start if you're unsure how to set yours.
Alright, you made it. Now you can go out there and spend a few hours practicing so you can get good enough to get some clips. I know this was kind of long, but I wanted to give you as much information as possible to set you up to potentially even start into a new hobby. Let me know if there's anything you would change here, put your settings in the comments for others to try. See you all in the next one. GG's.